My name is Xin Yu, but inside the archive, they call me the Raven Archivist. I collect the cases that official reports could never fully explain. Missing people, forgotten villages, closed roads, old photographs, witness statements, names that appear where they should not exist. Most people call them ghost stories. I call them files. And tonight, I am opening one of them for you. Welcome to the Raven Files. This account came from Qiao Moyu, a young geomancer who entered Zhulin Village after receiving a desperate call from a bone collector being held inside a rural temple. The official record describes unlawful detention, desecrated graves, missing evidence, and a series of crimes hidden beneath the customs of an isolated village. But the official record does not explain why 3 coffins contained bodies without bones. It does not explain the 6 coins that appeared inside a university library, and it does not explain why 2 family bloodlines were written into a lock beneath the mountain. What follows is Qiao Moyu's account, in her own words.
My name is Qiao Moyu. I was a senior at Nanjiang University and the last recognized heir of the Qiao family's geomantic line. Most people would have called me a feng shui practitioner. That was not entirely wrong. It was simply incomplete. A geomancer does not decorate rooms or choose lucky colors. We read what the earth remembers the direction water refuses to flow, the cold gathering beneath a floor, the cut in a mountain vein, or the grave that has been silent for 10 years and suddenly begins to breathe. My master used to say the ground never lies, people do, and the worst lies are the ones built over something that is still. The call came late in the afternoon while I was revising my thesis in the university library. The number was unfamiliar. For nearly 5 seconds, no one spoke. I heard hurried breathing and a slow, steady dripping sound, as if water were striking stone somewhere underground. Then a man whispered my name. Qiao Moyu. I recognized the voice, although I had not heard it in years. Chen Junzhao, 8 years earlier. Junzhao had come to my master's house with his father to ask for a protective talisman. His family practiced an old Hakka burial profession. They were bone collectors. After a body had rested in the earth for several years, they reopened the grave, cleaned the bones, placed them inside a ceramic urn, and prepared a secondary burial. Junzhao had grown up around the dead. That evening, he sounded afraid of them. "I'm in Zhulin Village, Taihei County," he said. "You went there for a burial. 3 graves in a row had no bones." I stopped writing. "What do you mean, no bones? The bodies are still there. The skin is still there, but everything inside is gone." Something struck a door near him. Junzhao lowered his voice. "The villagers locked me inside the Bogong temple. They say I insulted the dead." "Did you? No. Moyu, listen to me. I don't think the things in those coffins are the dead anymore." A second voice sounded in the distance. Junzhao inhaled sharply. Then the call ended. I called back 3 times. The number was unreachable. But the dripping continued in my head long after the line went silent. When I stood, I collided with a student in a gray coat near a vending machine. 6 coins fell from his hand and spun across the floor. 2 landed face up. 4 landed face down. Together, they formed the Jian hexagram, water over mountain, obstruction, a warning of... I bent to collect the coins. Only then did I notice they were old, their edges worn smooth. They could not have been used in the vending machine. The machine accepted digital payment only. I looked up. The student had already disappeared between the shelves. All I saw was one sleeve turning a corner, embroidered with a thin silver line shaped like a wave. My master had warned me never to cast a reading from accidental coins, but those coins had not felt accidental. I called 3 people. The first was Lingzhou, a Maoshan disciple with an instinct for danger and a habit of moving before anyone finished explaining the plan. The second was Feifei, a graduate researcher in environmental chemistry. She did not believe every unexplained event was supernatural, which was one reason I trusted her. The third was Jiang Haoyan, a quiet investigator who had once lost his older sister in a case no one solved. He remembered details other people ignored and asked questions they wished he would not. I told them only what mattered. A bone collector had been detained. 3 graves had contained bodies without skeletons. The villagers were hiding something. Within an hour, we were on our way to Jiangxi. I took my Qiao family compass. Before leaving, I placed the 6 coins inside my coat. The needle of the compass trembled the moment the coins touched it. Zhulin Village lay deep in bamboo country. The road narrowed into a wet ribbon between steep green slopes. Bamboo pressed in from both sides, clicking softly in the wind like thousands of thin bones. There was no cell service after the last mountain tunnel. At the village entrance stood a stone marker blackened by age. Someone had carved a wave symbol beneath the name Zhulin and later tried to scrape it away. An elderly woman named He rented us 2 rooms. She was polite, almost excessively so. Before we had removed our coats, she brought tea. "The mountain air is damp," she said. Feifei lifted the cup, smelled it, and set it down without tasting. The tea carried the faint bitterness of medicinal root. Outside, a motorcycle without a license plate passed the house, slowed, and continued uphill. Zhulin looked peaceful in the way isolated places often do, when everyone has agreed not to discuss the same thing. Bamboo leaves swept the tiled roofs. Smoke rose from kitchen chimneys. Elderly men played cards beneath an awning beside the stream. Nothing in the village suggested panic. Yet every conversation shifted when we approached. At the guest house, He registered only Jiang Haoyan's name. When I asked why she did not need the rest, she said the village had few visitors, and everyone already knew who we were. That was the first clear sign that news traveled through Zhulin faster than we did. The second came from the children. They watched us openly, but none would accept food or water from an adult outside their own family. One girl carried a silver paper fish folded from the lining of a cigarette package. Its scales had been marked with the same reversed wave symbol carved beneath the village stone. When I asked where she learned the design, her grandmother pulled her away so hard the paper tore. By then, I understood that the village was not simply hiding a recent crime. The silence had been taught across generations. The villagers knew why we had come before we asked a single question. At the food stall, conversation stopped when Chen Junjiao's name was mentioned. A butcher said Junjiao had become obsessed with a corpse. A farmer said he had tried to kiss one. A woman carrying vegetables said the mountain spirit had punished him for disrespecting the dead. 3 people, 3 versions, all using the same phrase. He saw what he wanted to see. Jiang Haoyan wrote the phrase in his notebook. When the woman walked away, he said, "That isn't village gossip. It's rehearsed language." Lingzhou watched the road behind us. The motorcycle had returned. This time, the rider did not pass. He stopped beneath a tree and remained there, helmet facing our table. No one in the village looked at him. That told me more than if they had. The village used 2 water systems. The old wells had been sealed with brick. Most homes drew water from a reservoir on the hillside. Adults drank it without hesitation, but children carried bottles from the school or relatives outside the village. Tea served to visitors came from somewhere else. He accidentally called it temple water. The temple well was locked behind the main hall, but Lingzhou found a narrow ceramic pipe running from the temple wall into Mrs. He's kitchen. While the woman stepped outside, Song Feifei collected a few milliliters from the tap used only for tea. We also took a sample from the hillside reservoir. A field test showed both contained plant alkaloids, but the color reactions were opposite. Feifei frowned. One may suppress sensory response, the other may increase it. An antidote and a trigger, I asked. Maybe. Not yet. We don't have a laboratory. For now, there are only two substances being used for opposite purposes. We spent the next several hours interviewing families connected to recent secondary burials. The statements were inconsistent in details, but identical in structure. Every family insisted the deceased had been difficult to preserve. Every family praised Er Shugong for protecting them from misfortune. Every family claimed the bone collector had behaved strangely before the coffin was opened. Jiang Haoyan asked each person to describe the strange behavior without using the words they had already heard from someone else. Most could not. One elderly man finally admitted that he had never seen Chen Junzhao touch a corpse. He had only heard the accusation after the temple bell rang. Another woman said her husband had been present at Ma Guochang's last burial. When Jiang asked to speak with him, she claimed he was working in another province. 5 minutes later, a neighbor said the man had died 2 years earlier. As the questions continued, doors began closing along the street. The rider on the unmarked motorcycle followed us from a distance. At first, he pretended to repair the engine. Later, he stopped pretending. The village was allowing us to move, but only along routes someone had already chosen. At the village cooperative, Jiang Haoyan noticed the public water use chart did not match the actual capacity of the storage tanks. The office cabinet was locked. There was no key on the desk, but a fresh mud mark ran beneath the cabinet toward a gap in the wall. Jiang used a metal ruler and drew out an oilcloth envelope. Inside was a key and a note. Do not trust the public record. We later learned Zhou Shifu had placed it there. The locked cabinet contained 2 ledgers. The first was clean and ordinary. The second showed the truth. Before every secondary burial, consumption from the hillside reservoir increased for 3 days, while water drawn from the temple well decreased. The villagers were taking more of the suppressing substance. Guests and bone collectors were being served stronger tea. Someone had designed the system to protect one group while sensitizing the other. Song Feifei photographed 3 pages before a motorcycle stopped outside. The rider remained seated, helmet on, engine running. We left through the rear door. At the clinic, the nurse initially denied treating outsiders. Jiang Haoyan read aloud the dates of 2 past reburials. Her face changed. She produced a thin stack of medical records, several pages missing. Over 3 years, 7 outsiders had suffered fainting, memory loss, violent confusion, or hallucinations after attending reburials. The diagnoses were heat stroke, alcohol intoxication, or panic. 2 patients had no discharge signatures: Ma Guochang, a bone collector; Xu Wenbo, an amphibian researcher. Behind the clinic, Song Feifei found 2 cut hospital wristbands in the waste bin. One carried, the other showed only Zhu. Neither man had left the village by any documented route. When we returned to our rooms, the doors were still locked. But the position of my bag had changed. One water sample had been replaced with ordinary tap water. Whoever entered had taken the real vial and left a substitute, hoping we would test the wrong sample later. From that moment, we stopped pretending the village had not noticed us. Song Feifei checked every vial and found residue from the missing temple water sample on the inside of the waste bin. Whoever searched the room had not merely stolen evidence. They had opened the vial, smelled it, and then washed their hands in our sink. Jiang Haoyan examined the lock. There was no damage. He or someone with access to her keys had entered. We moved all remaining samples into separate bags and divided them among the group. I kept the real reservoir sample inside the lining of my coat. Song Feifei filled a replacement vial with bitter herbal tea and left it in plain sight. Less than an hour later, someone entered the room again while we watched from the abandoned house across the lane. It was not the motorcycle rider. It was the... She took the false vial and carried it directly toward the temple. We photographed her and let her go. Confronting a courier would have warned the entire network, while following the vial showed us where the evidence was being controlled. The discovery changed our understanding of the village. The medical records, water system, burial customs, and temple guards were not separate pieces. They were departments of the same operation. In the afternoon, we visited Liu Nanshan, whose mother was scheduled for secondary burial the next morning. His wife said the old woman had died of lung disease. 10 minutes later, Liu Nanshan said she had never suffered from lung trouble. A cousin later claimed she had fallen into a well. 3 explanations for one death. They were not repeating one lie. They were losing track of which lie they had been assigned. On the road back, a child pressed a note into my palm. When the bell rings, do not look into the water. The child's mother dragged him away before I could speak. She apologized without meeting my eyes. Then she glanced toward the motorcycle waiting at the end of the road. That night, I examined the Qiao compass. The needle did not settle north. It leaned toward the temple and vibrated in short, regular pulses. Under the vibration was something else, a faint answering rhythm beneath the floor, like water moving through a pipe, or a heartbeat traveling through stone. Chen Zhungjiao's call had included dripping water, the sealed wells, the reservoir. Everything in Zhulin seemed to lead downward. Jiang Haoyan set an emergency rule on his phone. If he failed to enter a safety code within 6 hours, a compressed location packet and short audio file would transmit the moment the device found a signal. Lingzhou scheduled a message to her own order. That night, none of us slept. Chen Zhungjiao remained locked inside the temple, and every hour increased the chance that the villagers would move him somewhere we could not follow. Yet rushing the temple without understanding the water system could have exposed the entire village to whatever the reservoir compound had been suppressing. Jiang Haoyan arranged the evidence in 3 columns. What the villagers believed, what the inner group knew, what no one had yet explained. The first column contained bogong, polluted spirits, and ritual purification. The second contained the 2 water sources, falsified clinic records, blood collection, and bodies altered before secondary burial. The third contained the missing bones, the underground dripping, the wave symbols, and the reason Chen Zhungjiao's blood mattered. That last column is the real case, Jiang said. He was right. The crimes above ground existed to protect something below it. We prepared for the burial at dawn. Before sunrise, Song Feifei filtered a small amount of reservoir water and divided it among us. She refused to call it an antidote. We don't know what a higher dose would do, she said. This may help. It may... The liquid tasted faintly metallic. We reached the graveyard as mist moved between the bamboo. Liu Nanshan's family had already exposed the coffin. Shu Gong stood beside the grave. His real name was Liu Shide, but everyone in Zhulin called him Shu Gong, second grand-uncle Liu. He wore a high scarf despite the warm air. When he coughed, his throat produced a wet sound, as if fluid moved behind the skin. He did not drink reservoir water. A boy brought him tea from the temple well. At the time, I thought it was the habit of a sick old man. Later, I understood his body had been changing for years. 30 years earlier, Zhulin had suffered a strange illness. Villagers vomited, lost their balance, and heard voices coming from sealed wells. Liu Shaidi had studied herbal medicine and irrigation in the county town. He ordered the wells closed, redirected water from the hillside, and added a local route to the village supply. The symptoms declined. From that day forward, the village trusted him. When he told them to close their doors at the sound of the temple bell, they obeyed. When he said certain burial rituals prevented polluted spirits from returning, they obeyed again. Perhaps he had once been protecting Zhulin, but illness, age, and authority can change the meaning of protection. A keeper begins by standing in front of the door. Then one day he wonders what is behind it, and whether what lies there might allow him to live forever. The coffin rose from the earth under a hand pulley. Black liquid dripped from the lower boards. The smell was not simple decay. It was sweet, medicinal, and deeply wrong. 2 younger villagers recoiled. 4 older men near Ershugong watched us instead of the...
Not everyone in Zhulin knew the same amount. Some believed only in a protective ritual. Some knew bodies were being altered. A smaller group was watching to see how much we discovered. Before the lid came free, Liu Nanshan's eldest daughter began reciting a prayer under her breath. She was not watching the coffin. She was watching Ershugong. That small detail told me where authority truly rested. When one of the younger men questioned the black liquid dripping from the boards, Ershugong told him it was only groundwater. The man accepted the answer immediately, although the grave sat above the stream and the soil around it was dry. The village had learned not to test explanations. An explanation from the correct person was considered proof. Liu Nanshan's hands shook as he worked the last nail loose. He kept repeating that his mother had been peaceful in life and would never harm her descendants. It sounded less like a prayer than an argument he had been having with himself for years. Liu Nanshan removed the coffin nails. His daughters held a black umbrella over the opening, following the local secondary burial custom. The lid lifted. Inside lay the body of an elderly woman. Her skin was swollen and pale. Her face seemed almost untouched by 10 years underground. But beneath the surface, something shifted with the slow movement of trapped gas. To the family, the body still looked like their mother. To us, it was something else. The cheeks were too full. The jaw sat at the wrong angle. Beneath the skin of the neck, thin lines opened and closed like gill slits. There was no violent spiritual presence around the corpse. No hatred, no conscious dead. Only chemical odor, damp air, and the sickening impression of a human form being used as a container. Jiang Haoyan leaned close. His expression changed. "What do you see?" His voice had gone soft. He reached toward the coffin. I caught his wrist. The woman's face seemed to shift again. For one moment, I saw my master lying there, eyes open, asking why I had arrived too late. The reservoir water slowed the illusion. It did not stop it. Ershugong watched us carefully. "What do you see?" he asked. "A badly preserved body," I said. He smiled. "That is not what your friend sees." Liu Nanshan stepped between us and the coffin. "Begin the bone collection." "There are no bones to collect," I said. The villagers moved closer. Jiang Haoyan pulled free and tried to approach the body again. He whispered his sister's name. Lingzhou struck the pressure point below his ear. His knees weakened, but his eyes remained fixed on the coffin. Feifei opened one of her sample vials near his face. The sharp bitterness interrupted the scent. Jiang gasped as if waking under water. The face in the coffin collapsed back into that of the old woman. It was not a ghost, and it was not possession. It was a targeted hallucination built from grief. Someone had learned how to make the brain place the dead where it most wanted them. The villagers reacted immediately. They did not ask what had happened. They accused Jiang Haoyan of desecration, the same accusation used against Chen Junjiao. Liu Nanshan shouted that outsiders always became perverse around the dead. Shu Gong raised one hand. The crowd fell silent.
"Take them to the temple," he said. "Let Bogong judge whether their minds are clean." We did not resist, not because we were helpless, because Chen Junjiao was inside that temple. As the villagers bound our wrists loosely with red cord, Lu Lingzhou met my eyes. The knot she used to test the rope was a signal. She and Song Feifei would break away near the graveyard and investigate the remaining tombs. Jiang Haoyan and I would allow ourselves to be taken. The villagers believed we were divided by panic. In reality, we had finally entered the structure they were protecting. The Bogong Temple, a local earth and mountain shrine, stood on a low hill. The statue inside depicted a gentle old man holding a staff. At the base, beneath years of incense soot, I saw carved scales and a wave pattern. It was not merely an earth god image. Someone had altered an older water symbol and built a local shrine over it. Chen Junjiao knelt before the altar. His face was pale. Small cuts covered his forearm. When the guards left, he grabbed my sleeve. "They take blood every day," he whispered. "They call it repentance. Why your blood, I don't know." He hesitated, then admitted something he had hidden from me. The burial request had been sent through an account once used by his father. Attached was a photograph of a silver bracelet his father wore before disappearing. The message had said, "Come to Zhulin, and you will learn why your father never returned." The photograph attached to the burial request showed the bracelet resting on wet stone. In the upper corner was a blurred carving shaped like a divided mountain. Chen had recognized neither the place nor the symbol. But he had recognized a scratch on the clasp. His father had made it while repairing a burial urn when Chen was 11. No stranger should have known the bracelet mattered. That was why Chen answered the request without contacting me first. He was ashamed of how easily hope had overruled caution. "I knew it could be a trap," he said. "I just thought a trap still had to contain something real." That was not foolishness. It was how grief reasons when given one surviving detail. Chen Junjiao had not come only for work. He had walked into the village hoping his father might still be alive. Each time he was brought near a coffin, he saw his father more clearly. The voice changed from one encounter to the next. Once, it said Zhou Shifu knew the way down. Another time, it warned him never to trust anyone named Zhou. Jiang Haoyan listened carefully. "That means the hallucination isn't only extracting memory," he said. Two people had been shaping Junjiao's grief in different directions. Shu Gong wanted him to believe his father waited below and that opening the gate would save him. Zhou Shifu wanted him to distrust Shu Gong, but still descend. Both men needed Junjiao to keep moving toward the same place. I told the others about the student in gray and the 6 coins. Jiang looked at my compass. "Maybe he wasn't warning you away," he said. "Maybe he was making sure you brought that compass here." The temple guards brought tea. We did not drink. A drop on Song Feifei's remaining test strip turned deep violet. The concentration was stronger than the tea at Mrs. He's house. This was not hospitality. It was preparation. Anyone detained in the temple would be made more vulnerable before being taken underground. At sunset, the temple bell rang 3 times. Across Zhulin, doors closed. Lights went out one house after another. The entire village withdrew indoors. Not everyone knew what happened beneath the temple, but everyone had been trained not to witness it. After midnight, the courtyard emptied. I opened the storage room lock with a thin wire. A wardrobe stood against the rear wall. Behind it was a stairway descending into darkness. The dripping from Chen Junjiao's phone call sounded below us. Slow, patient, as if the mountain had been waiting for us to arrive. Before going down, Jiang Haoyan activated his emergency timer. "You have 6 hours," he told me. I ordered him to wait for Lingzhou. Then Chen Junjiao began walking in his sleep. His eyes remained closed. He crossed the room, entered the wardrobe, and descended the hidden stairs as if he had done it many times. I followed. The air grew cold after 30 steps. The darkness below was absolute, not the ordinary darkness of an unlit room. It had weight. It removed distance and direction until I could not tell whether the ground was beneath me or whether I was suspended over deep water. A breath sounded behind my neck.
Another shape moved in front of me. Something wet brushed my collar. I struck with a thunderseal. Purple light flashed. For an instant, Chen Junjiao's face appeared ahead of me, covered in scales. Pupils narrowed into vertical lines. Then darkness closed again. I forced myself not to trust what I saw. The thing in front of me moved on 4 limbs. The voice behind me came from a different direction. The illusion was layering familiar faces over uncertain shapes. I lit a flashlight. Black curtains divided the underground space into narrow cells. The fabric absorbed sound and broke the beam into short, confusing corridors. Behind one curtain hung rotting bundles of tissue. Behind another, a salamander-like animal the size of a cat fed from preserved human remains. It had external gills, black skin, and eyes adapted to darkness. The creature was not ancient. It had been bred. Metal clips marked its tail. A number had been burned into the skin. This was not a natural cavern disturbed by superstition. It was a hidden facility disguised as a ritual site, and the graves above had been supplying it. The deeper I went, the more carefully the underground space had been organized. Each curtained cell had a number painted near the floor. Some contained feeding tissue. Others held tools for removing bone and internal organs. A ledger hanging beside one chamber recorded temperature, humidity, and the time required for different bodies to collapse after treatment. The methods were crude, but the record-keeping was not. One cell contained clothing, wallets, and identity cards from outsiders. Ma Guochang's bone knife lay on a shelf beside Xu Wenbo's field notebook. Several pages had been removed, but the last surviving entry described an amphibian secretion that caused subjects to associate unfamiliar shapes with emotionally significant faces. Xu had understood the hallucination mechanism. That was likely why he never left. A second notebook showed attempts to increase the creature's tolerance for human tissue. Dates in the margins stretched back more than 20 years. Gong had not discovered one monstrous animal and hidden it. He had built a program. I found a series of clay pipes running through the curtains. Some carried air, some carried liquid. One led upward toward the graveyard. The black fluid inside the coffins was not accidental seepage. It was part of a controlled system. Then I heard Jiang Haoyan calling my name. He stood in a dark compartment holding an oil lamp. He said Lingzhou had arrived at the temple and that I had come back upstairs to call him down. But I had never returned. I asked him a question only the real Jiang would know. "What did you hide after your sister died?" "A photograph," he answered. "Wrong. He had hidden her blue hair clip because he could not bear to watch his mother cry over it." I closed my eyes. The figure disappeared. What remained was a large salamander moving beside a hidden speaker. The voice did not come from the animal. A small speaker had been fixed inside a stone recess, connected to wires running along the ceiling. The creature's gill secretion altered perception. The recorded voice gave the mind a person to build. I tore out the wire. Jiang Haoyan's voice warped and stopped. The salamander fled through the curtains. Nearby, I found Jiang's phone on the ground, still counting down.
Its local recording revealed what had happened. After I descended, Jiang heard my voice calling for help. He followed. At the 10th step, gas released from a wall vent. Zhou Shifu appeared behind him, apologized, and pressed a drugged cloth over his face. Jiang had not carelessly wandered into danger. He had been drawn down by my voice and ambushed by someone he trusted. Drag marks on the floor showed where his body had been taken. Chen Junjiao and I followed the marks. We passed chambers containing empty burial clothes stretched over bamboo frames. One held a bone urn filled with remains from at least 3 different people. Another contained no bones at all, only skin. At the base of that chamber lay a thin stone tablet engraved with the same wave symbol found on the child's silver paper fish. The missing skeletons were not random theft. Different methods had been used to hide the same crime. Some bodies were emptied and reinflated. Some graves received mixed bones. Some received nothing. The phrase "graves without bones" was not Junjiao's frightened exaggeration. It was a pattern. At the end of the curtain maze, warm air rose from below. So did the smell of wet stone, medicinal root, and something alive in great numbers. The passage opened into a vast underground valley. A black pool occupied the center. Around it stood 8 stone pillars. Lingzhou emerged from a side path with Song Feifei. Both were covered in mud. They had reopened 3 graves after we were taken. Each corpse had been hollowed. Tubes beneath the coffins led toward the mountain. Lu stopped beside the pillars and touched narrow channels cut into the floor. "These aren't supports," she said. "They're locks in a water-channeling formation." She pointed southeast. "That is the gate of life. If we need an exit, we use that path." Then she indicated the northern pillar. "If the water has already changed direction, that one can be broken. Touch any other pillar, and the lower reservoir may flood the cavern or collapse the entire slope." Her warning would later keep us from burying Zhulin alive. Jiang Haoyan and Song Feifei were suspended above the pool in a net of treated fiber. Zhou Shifu stood beside them. Ershu Gong waited near a stone platform. Behind him, something enormous shifted beneath the water. Along the walls, smaller salamanders crawled among cages and feeding racks. For a moment, the valley seemed filled with hundreds of moving bodies. Then the bitter reservoir compound reached my senses. The illusion contracted. Some shapes became hanging tissue sacks. Others became shadows cast by juveniles behind curtains. The endless nightmare reduced to a filthy breeding facility containing a little more than 20 altered salamanders. It was still terrible, but now it was countable, understandable. That was important. Fear becomes harder to control when it has no edges. Ershu Gong had built his power by making the unknown feel infinite. I needed someone from the Qiao line to find the final gate. Why only the Qiao compass can identify the true lock? I searched for 17 years and never passed the outer chamber. At the base of the pool were 2 carved channels. One curved like a river and carried the character Chen. The other formed an 8-direction compass with a circular socket at the center. The socket matched my compass. Ershu Gong tightened his grip on Chen Junjiao. "Do not explain more. You still need her." Zhou said, "The Chen channel has responded, but the compass needle has not settled." That was the plan. Use Junjiao's blood to open the first mechanism. Force me to place the Qiao compass in the second. Then kill everyone who had seen the chamber. Ershu Gong had never intended to murder me before the gate opened. He needed me conscious enough to unlock it. "Your brother is below." I asked Zhou Shifu. His expression changed. 17 years ago, they sent him down as a living conduit.
Gong told me he died, but the records showed a heartbeat for 3 years after the descent. So you helped continue this? I helped myself reach the door. Zhou had guided us to evidence. He had left the cabinet key. He had also drugged Jiang Haoyan and delivered him underground. He was neither ally nor loyal servant. He had used both sides. Gong wanted longevity. Zhou wanted his brother. Chen Zhungjiao wanted his father. And someone had brought the Qiao compass to Zhulin through me. Zhou Shifu's grief was the most dangerous because he had turned it into patience. For 17 years, he had worked close enough to Gong to learn the system, but never close enough to be trusted with the final map. He guided investigators toward evidence when it weakened Gong. The key in the cooperative had been his invitation. Jiang Haoyan's abduction had been his insurance. He needed us informed enough to reach the chamber and trapped enough to complete the opening. When I understood that, I stopped asking whether Zhou was on our side. He had no side. He had a destination. Every person in that cavern was being pulled by a different grief. That was the true mechanism beneath the village. Not blood, not water. Need. And need can open doors reason would keep sealed. Gong drew a narrow blade across Chen Junjiao's wrist. Blood struck the channel marked Chen. It did not spread. The stone absorbed it and carried it forward in a thin red line. A deep vibration passed through the floor. At the bottom of the pool, a circular stone lock shifted 1/2 inch. Black water appeared through the opening. My compass began spinning inside my coat. The needle no longer pointed north. It pointed toward the empty socket in the second formation. Gong pressed the blade deeper against Junjiao's skin. "Place the compass," he said, "or he will bleed until the gate opens without it." I moved forward. The large animal beneath the pool rose closer to the surface. Its pale eyes opened. It had been waiting for the same signal. I removed the Qiao compass. The needle shook so violently it struck the glass. Gong believed the device was a key. He was right. But a geomancer is not only trained to open a current, we are also trained to misdirect one. I knelt beside the socket and pretended to align the 8 directions. Then I rotated the face of the compass and placed it. The formation reacted immediately. Light traveled through the carved lines. For 1 second, everything became still. Then the current reversed. Chen Junjiao's blood was pushed backward from the channel. Pressure erupted beneath the pool. Stone pipes in the walls began to shake. Gong realized what I had done. He shouted for Zhou Shifu to stop me. Zhou did not move. The gate had not opened, but the system above it had begun to turn against itself. Before the stone gave way, the water became perfectly still. That silence was worse than movement. Every juvenile in the cages flattened itself against the floor. Then a pale ridge passed beneath the surface. The creature had been listening to us from below the entire time. When it rose, the first thing I noticed was not its size. It was the scar tissue around its gills, layers of cuts, injections, and crude grafts. The animal was not simply a product of breeding. It had survived repeated procedures. For one moment, I felt pity. Then the pool wall shattered, and the adult salamander came through. It was nearly 13 feet long. Its skin was black-gray, stretched over thick muscle, and its external gills opened like red branches along its neck. The creature struck 2 oil lamps with its tail. Darkness swallowed the valley. Then it began producing voices. My mother called from the left. Jiang Haoyan's sister cried behind us. Chen Junjiao's father whispered from the water. The sounds were incomplete single words, breaths, fragments of memory. But the secretion in the air encouraged our minds to build entire people around them. Jiang pressed both hands against the stone floor. "It isn't using sight," he said. "It's tracking vibration." We stopped moving. The animal slowed. Its head turned from one sound to another, searching. Chen Junzhao breathed too sharply. The creature lunged. Lingzhou threw an iron bar across the chamber. It struck the ground on the right. The salamander changed direction instantly. Lu ran in the opposite arc, stamping hard enough to pull it away from Chen Junzhao and the center formation. Song Feifei watched the creature's neck.
"The gills open before it turns," she said. "It is processing scent and vibration through the same tissue." The animal swung back and caught Lu's forearm between its teeth. Her protective wrap prevented a deep bite, but the gills pressed against her skin. The creature convulsed. Only for a few seconds. The small amount of reservoir compound in Lu's body had disrupted its sensory response at close range. "Now!" Feifei shouted. "That is all the time we have. I was still holding the compass against the reversed current. If I released it, the gate could realign. If I stayed, Lu would be dragged into the pool." Jiang Haoyan reached the compass first. He pressed both hands over it. "I can hold it," he said. "You don't know the alignment. I know where your hands were." That was Jiang. He did not need to understand the entire system. He remembered the exact position. I ran. Song Feifei threw me the last vial of reservoir water. Lu drove her knee against the salamander's jaw and forced its neck upward. The external gills opened. I emptied the vial across them. The creature thrashed. It did not die. It lost direction. Its tail struck the northern pillar. Lu shouted for everyone to move southeast. The pillar cracked. Water roared beneath the floor. Because the current had already reversed, the released pressure did not flood the valley. It pulled toward the damaged pool. The salamander slid backward, claws tearing grooves through the stone. Ishu Gong crawled toward the center formation. He had lost his scarf. Along his neck, narrow openings flexed beneath the skin. His pupils had become vertical. Song Feifei stared at him. "It looks like grafted tissue undergoing rejection," she said. "I don't know what he did to himself, but this is not a natural transformation." Ishu Gong had not merely raised the animals. He had used them. Perhaps their tissue, perhaps compounds from their glands, perhaps blood from the people brought beneath the temple. He had once saved Zhulin from the illness below. Then he had tried to make the illness save him from death. He reached for Chen Junzhao's wound. If the Chen channel needed more blood, he intended to finish the opening with whatever remained. Zhou Shifu drew a knife. For the first time, Ishu Gong looked uncertain. Zhou cut Ishu Gong's hand before he could touch the channel. "You promised one blood offering," Zhou said. "You promised my brother would be released." Ishu Gong stared at him. "If the gate remains closed, you will never know whether he is alive." "I know," Zhou looked toward the black opening beneath the pool, "but I also know you planned to kill all of us the moment it opened." For one brief second, Ishu Gong no longer looked like a ruler or a monster. He looked like the man who had once saved a village and lived long enough to believe every later death was a fair price for his own life. Zhou shoved him away from the formation. The disoriented salamander struck with its tail. Ishu Gong was swept into the broken pool. We did not see him surface again. In the confusion, Zhou Shifu opened a stone recess and removed an oil-wrapped file. I saw old diagrams, family names, and a map marked with 2 gates. He had not betrayed Ishu Gong for us. He had waited until the first gate failed, taken the information he needed, and chose— "Zhou!" I shouted. He looked back once. "My brother was sent below, alive. That does not mean he is alive now." "No," he said. "But it means someone lied about when he died." Then he disappeared through the Gate of Life passage.
Lingzhou started after him. The cavern shook again. She stopped. The formation was collapsing. We could chase Zhou or save the people still trapped above the pool. He knew which choice we would make. That was why he had waited until then to run. We cut down Song Feifei and Jiang Haoyan. Chen Junjiao stood near the broken channel, listening. His father's voice rose from the water. "Junjiao!" He turned. The voice came again. "Come down!" I seized his wrist. "That may not be your father. What if it is?" I could not honestly tell him it was impossible. After what we had found, absolute denial.
"If he is alive," I said, "you cannot rescue him by going alone. If he is dead, then whatever is calling you is even less worth dying for." Junjiao looked into the opening. The voice repeated his childhood name. His knees nearly gave way. Then he turned from the pool. Behind us. Zhou's footsteps moved deeper into the side passage. He had chosen the door. Junjiao chose the living. We escaped through the southeastern passage identified by Lingzhou. The main chamber collapsed behind us. The roar traveled through the mountain like thunder trapped underground. At the surface, several villagers had gathered near the temple. Some were frightened, some angry. A few older men tried to block the path. Then the ground shifted beneath the courtyard. A section of paving stone sank, exposing one of the concealed air pipes. Black vapor rose. The villagers backed away. For the first time, they saw physical proof that the temple contained something beyond ritual. "Mrs." He began to cry. Liu Nanshan stared at the pipe. "You said the dead were being cleansed," he whispered. No one answered. The temple bell rang once by itself. Then the rope snapped. Across Zhulin, doors opened. People stepped into the road, uncertain whether the rule that had governed their lives still existed. Near the village entrance, Jiang Haoyan's phone found one bar of signal. The emergency system transmitted a low data packet our location, the names of the missing men, and a short recording of Zhou Shifu's ambush, the photographs and full documents uploaded only after we reached the main road. Lingzhou's scheduled message had already been forwarded to county police. Taihe investigators and local officers arrived before dawn. Cave rescue teams, forestry personnel, and provincial disease control specialists reached Zhulin later that morning and around noon. The reservoir and temple well were sealed. Children were taken outside the village for medical screening. The western graveyard was closed. No one was permitted to reopen a coffin without supervision. The official operation began as a criminal investigation involving desecration of remains, unlawful detention, and possible homicide. It became something larger before the first day ended. Rescue workers entered the underground system with protective equipment. They found cages, feeding racks, preserved tissue, medical tubing, blood records, and 23 salamander specimens. They found the stone lock beneath the pool. They did not open it. The Qiao compass was no longer in the socket, but the stone retained a circular burn mark where it had rested. Teams recovered blood, part of Gong's scarf, and his walking staff near the broken pool. They did not find his body. Legally, Liu Shaidi was listed as missing after the cave collapse. His death was never confirmed. They also failed to find Ma Guochang or Xu Wenbo. A deeper passage had collapsed beyond the first water lock. On one surviving ledger, both names appeared beside the same notation, transferred to the water level. No one could say whether that phrase meant a chamber, an experiment, or a grave. The investigation divided Zhulin's residents into 3 groups. Most younger villagers and families outside the burial network knew only that Gong performed protective rites. They drank reservoir water and closed their doors when the bell rang because that was what their parents had always done. A second group knew the bodies were being altered. They believed flesh and internal tissue were being removed to extract pollution from the dead. Their superstition did not erase responsibility, but it explained how they could defend the desecration of relatives while believing they were protecting the family.
A third group knew nearly everything. 7 people had transported tissue, prepared tea for outsiders, altered clinic records, watched the temple, and moved captives below ground. They knew Ma Guochang and Xu Wenbo had not left Zhulin. They continued because Shu Gong paid them and promised longer life. Liu Nanshan belonged to the second group. He had agreed to let his mother undergo the so-called cleansing. He had not known her skeleton would be removed. When the truth became public, he tried to call himself a victim. Jiang Haoyan asked him one question. If you believed the ritual was harmless, why did your family prepare 3?
Liu Nanshan had no answer. Grief does not automatically make a person innocent. Sometimes people protect a lie because admitting the truth would mean accepting what they allowed to happen. The village cooperative ledger showed payments to several families after each reburial. The amounts were small, not enough to buy silence from someone who understood the crime, but enough to reward someone who had already decided not to ask. Zhulin had not been ruled by one monster. It had been sustained by layers of chosen ignorance. The first public statement described the site as an illegal animal breeding facility connected to the desecration of human remains. It omitted the bloodline records, the water formation, and the sealed chamber beneath the pool.
That omission was deliberate. Taipei authorities feared curiosity would bring treasure hunters, occult groups, and amateur investigators into an unstable cave system. The surviving ledgers were classified as evidence in an ongoing missing person investigation. Families were asked to identify personal items recovered underground. Some refused. Accepting the items meant admitting that relatives believed to have left Zhulin had died there. Others arrived carrying photographs and left with sealed bags. The case expanded beyond the village. Several old burial requests had been sent from accounts linked to the same network. Zhulin may have been the main facility, but it had drawn victims from 3 provinces. Laboratory results arrived 1 week later. Song Feifei's field hypothesis was partly correct. Tests showed that the hillside reservoir contained a plant compound capable of dulling the brain's response to certain odor-based triggers. The temple water contained a related compound that made the brain more vulnerable to those same triggers. Neither was supernatural by itself. Together with secretion from the salamanders, darkness, recorded voices, and emotional suggestion, they could produce highly individualized hallucinations. The victim did not see a random ghost. The brain selected a person connected to unresolved grief. That explained Jiang Haoyan's sister, Chen Junjiao's father, my master. It also explained why the villagers called every outsider's reaction a moral failure. The system made people reveal what they wanted most, then punish them for revealing it. Shu Gong had turned grief into evidence against the grieving. The animal testing was more difficult to explain. The specimens were related to giant salamanders, but their growth rates, skin structures, and gill tissues had been deliberately altered through generations of selective.
They had been fed human tissue, and contamination was possible. Researchers refused to make claims beyond the evidence. One juvenile died during the first night of observation. It left behind a shed skin much larger than expected for its body. The findings suggested an abnormal growth cycle, but not how large the population might eventually become. In old water script records recovered from the temple, similar creatures were called waterborne living descendants of something believed to inhabit submerged chambers. The scientific report used no such word. It simply marked the species as unidentified. Chen Junjiao spent 4 days in the hospital. The cuts on his arms were shallow. The deeper injury was psychological. He continued hearing his father's voice whenever water dripped in a quiet room. Jiang Haoyan stayed with him during the first night. He did not tell Zhao to stop listening. Instead, he asked him to write down every sentence. By morning, a pattern emerged. Some phrases came directly from childhood memories. Others used language Chen's father had never used. The false lines were instructions. Open the door. Trust Zhou. Do not trust Zhou. Come alone. Bring the geomancer. Someone had constructed a conversation,
But one phrase did not fit either pattern. It used a private nickname known only to Chen and his father. No recording of that nickname had been found. We could not explain it. A mark appeared near Chen Junjiao's wrist 3 days after the collapse. At first, it looked like irritation from the restraints. Then the skin formed a reversed spiral of fine scales. The symbol matched the wave seal on the stone tablet and the pattern hidden beneath the Bo Gong statue. It did not match the mark used for sacrifices in Shu Gong's ledger. The direction was reversed. Then what is it Junjiao asked? I can think of one possibility. I said, you were not being recognized as an offering. The mechanism may have recognized you as someone authorized to open it. That was an inference, not a conclusion. But uncertainty made it more disturbing. If the Chen family had once been gatekeepers, then Junjiao's father may not have disappeared as a victim. He may have gone below because he believed it was his duty, or because someone convinced him it was. The oil-wrapped file Zhou Shifu stole was incomplete. Several pages remained in a damaged cabinet near the pool. They contained family names arranged in 2 columns, Chen, Qiao. Beside them was a sentence written in old water script. The Chen blood opens the current. The Qiao needle chooses the door. Below that, another line had been added later. When the Shu Gong had not created the underground system, he had inherited it. The reservoir compound, the sealed wells, and the water channeling formation may once have been part of a containment method. He transformed containment into exploitation. Zhou Shifu believed his brother remained below. Chen believed his father might. Whether either man was alive was unknown, but Zhou's belief was enough to send him toward the location of the second gate. There was one person I had not questioned, my master. I called him from the hospital corridor. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he asked, "Did the first gate open?" "No." A breath left him, not relief, recognition. I told him about the old record, about the Chen blood, the Qiao compass, the instruction to change the keeper. 30 years ago, I said, someone altered the formation beneath Zhulin. No. Then who went there? I did. I tightened my grip on the phone. You were not the Qiao heir then? No, he said. I became part of the Qiao line because of what happened in Zhulin. That answer changed the meaning of everything he had taught me. My master had arrived during the village illness. He had helped Liu Shide seal the lower water chamber and redirect the contaminated wells. At the time, Shu Gong truly wanted to save Zhulin, but the original keeper had died. The system required a replacement. My master refused to sacrifice another person. Instead, he altered the formation so the gate could remain closed without a living conduit. The change was temporary. He believed it would last 20 years. It lasted longer. Liu Shide later discovered the chamber contained biological compounds capable of slowing tissue decay. He began experiments in secret. By the time my master learned the truth, access to Zhulin had already been closed. Why did you never tell the Qiao family? I asked. Because the family would have restored the original system. With a living keeper? Yes. And you chose silence? I chose delay. My master had not simply remained silent for 30 years. He had returned to the region twice. The first time, Local officials denied him access after Ershu Gong accused him of interfering with protected religious property. The second time, the entrance he remembered had been sealed, and the village claimed the underground chamber had collapsed. He monitored unexplained illnesses in Taihe and sent anonymous warnings when reburial workers disappeared. None produced enough evidence for a search warrant. That history did not absolve him. He had chosen secrecy because he feared the Qiao family would restore the old living keeper system. In protecting one person from
The difference between guilt and responsibility is that guilt looks backward. Responsibility decides what must happen next. Delay had protected one generation. It had also given Ershu Gong decades to build his operation. My master understood that. His silence on the phone carried more guilt than any confession. "Did you send the student in grey?" I asked. "No." "Did you send the coins?" "No." "Who knew I would bring the compass? Anyone who knew what you were?" That answer was not enough, but it was honest. Before ending the call, he said one final thing. I looked at the Qiao compass resting on the hospital table. The needle pointed southwest, not toward Zhulin alone, beyond Jiangxi, toward Guizhou province. Zhou Shifu had not taken a random escape route. The stolen map led to another lock, another part of the same system. Zhulin had been the first gate, but not the only one. Before I left Nanjiang, I visited Chen Junjiao. He sat beside the hospital window, listening to rainwater move through the gutter. "Do you still hear him?" I asked. "Sometimes." "What does he say?" "Nothing new." That was almost reassuring. He looked down at the reversed scale mark near his wrist. "If the gate recognized me, does that mean my father chose this for me?" "No, but the bloodline. Blood is a key only if someone builds a lock around it." He studied my face for a long time. "You are going to Guizhou?" It was not a question. "I need to find Zhou before he reaches the second gate. And if my father's there, I will find the truth before I tell you what to hope for." It was the cruelest promise I could make, and the only honest one. Jiang Haoyan met me outside the hospital. He carried his sister's blue hair clip in a sealed evidence pouch. After Zhulin, he had finally taken it from the drawer where he had hidden it for years. "What will you do with it?" I asked. "Stop pretending I—" The hallucination had known what he wanted. That did not mean it had known his sister. Grief had been Zhulin's most efficient weapon because it convinced each victim to complete the deception for themselves. Song Feifei remained with the provincial laboratory team. Lingzhou traveled ahead to contact people she trusted in Guizhou. Chen Junjiao was not medically cleared to leave, but he gave me the photograph of his father's bracelet. The blurred carving in the corner matched a symbol on Zhou Shifu's stolen map, a mountain divided by a river. When I returned to Nanjiang University, campus security gave me the footage from the library. The camera showed me standing near the vending machine. 3 seconds before I bent down, the image broke into white interference. When it returned, no student stood in front of me. The 6 coins were already on the floor. The camera had not recorded them falling. The guard blamed a damaged cable. That explanation was possible, but the interference affected one camera for only 3 seconds, and the 6th coin carried a reversed wave seal beneath its corrosion, the same seal now visible on Chen Junjiao's wrist. The stranger in gray had known I would understand the Jian hexagram. More importantly, he had known I would carry the Qiao compass to Zhulin. I spread the recovered records across my desk. The Jian hexagram was water over mountain. At first, I believed the mountain was Zhulin and the water was the chamber below it. That interpretation had been too simple. The mountain was the visible obstruction, the village, the temple, the graves, and the human system built to conceal a crime.
The water was what remained hidden, the bloodlines, the first keeper, the submerged chamber, and the second gate. Jian does not say the road is impossible. It warns that forcing the obvious path will only deepen the obstruction. Zhou Shifu had understood that. When the first gate failed, he did not try to reopen it. He took the map and changed direction, southwest, toward Guizhou. That evening, my master sent me an address and one sentence.
If you want to know what I did 30 years ago, arrive before Zhou opens the second gate. I read the message twice. The Zhulin investigation had ended in the legal sense. Suspects had been arrested. The water system had been sealed. The graves were under protection, and the surviving animals were contained. But a case is not always finished when the guilty are identified. Sometimes it ends only when the mechanism that created the crime can no longer operate. The mechanism beneath Zhulin was older than Gong. It had survived the fall of the village network, the collapse of the cavern, and the failure of the first gate. The compass needle pointed southwest. I placed the 6 coins beside it. For several seconds, nothing moved. Then the needle turned toward Guizhou and held. The official Zhulin file closed there.
The official report may close the case, but not every file stays silent. The water beneath Zhulin was sealed. The surviving evidence was removed, and the village returned, slowly, to the ordinary routines it had abandoned long ago. But Zhou Shifu was never found. The second gate remained unopened, and the name of Chen Junjiao's father was never removed from the list of those transferred to the water level. Some roads still wait in the dark, some names are still missing from the record, and some witnesses never truly leave the places they survived. If another file is found, if another voice comes forward, I will open the archive again. Until then, this is Shen Yu, the Raven archivist, and the Zhulin file is now closed.